Hi guys, just a quick note before the start of this video. This one won't actually contain any gameplay. Essentially, I was going to do the introducing the squad at the same time as the first two games, but it went on for so long that the video would have been about 45 minutes long, and no, I'm not going through that. So what I've done is I've separated it into two parts. However, both videos are going up on the same day, today, obviously. So if you aren't really interested in getting to know behind the team, just go straight to the next video and it'll be the first two games of the league. Otherwise, watch this, get to know the players, what they do, what I think they're going to do in the team this year, and yeah, whichever floats your boat, really. It doesn't matter to me. So yeah, just thought I'd let you know so that you didn't sit watching all of this waiting for gameplay. Hello everybody and welcome back to some more FM19 Journeyman, where we are about to go into our first full episode in the Swedish 2nd Division Västergötland in charge of Torslanda IK. Now, from what I understand, this is the 4th tier of Swedish football, so that one's now ironed out. I basically had to Google it because I couldn't figure it out from the game. So yeah, 4th tier of Swedish football, so we've just gone from Scotland to Sweden, but we're still playing at sort of a similar level. And we're not looking too bad. So if we just go through the pre-season real quick, you can see results sort of, well, they took on a bit of a pattern. We started off with a couple of narrow defeats, picked up a draw, and then won every game after that, with the scorelines getting, you know, they went from 1-goal leads to 2, then there was a 3. So, yeah, we've done essentially quite okay. You'll notice a couple of names here appearing quite a few times. Anton Salah had an absolute stormer. Once he got going, he just could not stop scoring. A couple of penalties in there. I think one of those he earned as well, so yeah, he's been pretty good so far. And you also see Hampus Bowman is in there 3 times as well. He's one of the attacking midfielders in the team. So to see him picking up goals on quite a consistent basis is also very nice. So speaking of a couple of players on the team, I will take you through the team right now. And as you can see here, the most immediate thing you will notice is that the squad has grown massively. So as you can see, we have drastically increased the size of the squad because we had about 3 players on the bench last time. Now, I'm going to run you through each of the players, and I'm going to do it on a position-by-position basis and just sort of talk about what I think about each one. This episode's probably going to be quite long, but we are still going to get 2 games in it, so yeah, be sure to stick around for that. So our starting goalkeeper is this guy, David Atma, picked up on a free transfer, and essentially, he just looks pretty decent. We didn't have that many good options for keepers, and, you know, with the amount of time it takes to scout them all and everything, it really limited our choices even more. But all around, he looks pretty balanced. Like, he doesn't really excel at anything, but he also doesn't have any major weaknesses. Communication is maybe a little bit of a worry, but it's not a great deal. So, yeah, as you can see, he was completely without club, and we picked him up on a free. No real issues, and yeah, he looks like he should be alright. He's done alright in the preseason friendly games, and some of those teams were expected to do a little bit better than us, so no major issues there. So this is our backup goalkeeper, Frederick Eriksen. As you can see, he's quite a bit weaker, a bit better physically, but his general goalkeeping abilities are just quite low. He played the first couple of games for us due to him being the first keeper we bought in, and he wasn't great. It was actually the 2 games we lost, so yeah, this is why we bought in the second keeper, but he should be an okay backup. He shouldn't do anything too drastically wrong. He just doesn't really excel at anything, and he's a little bit average, but he's happy to be a backup. He's only on £25 a week. No major complaints about having him in the club. He's certainly, you know, one of the better options of what we could have picked up. He'll be fine as a backup. So one of the stars of the team then is right back, Felix Haaland. And as you can see here, just from his star rating, you can tell he's pretty great. But all around, I think it's his mentals that really stand out to me, especially these lower ones, things like work rate, off the ball, teamwork, positioning. They're just very good for this level, especially for a 22-year-old. And then his technicals aren't too bad either in the areas that sort of matter. His marking, his tackling, for example. Couple of weaknesses in there that are a bit of a worry, notably his crossing and his passing aren't great for a wing-back on support, but his physicals do quite make up for it. They are quite good, especially things like stamina and natural fitness for a wing-back who's going to be going up and down the pitch a lot. It's quite important to have those stats, and yeah, he should be pretty good. He's been quite good in the friendlies so far. He's played all of them, so I'm hoping that he can carry that on into the league. So this guy was brought in as a backup at the right-back position, and this is Sebastian Bickle Bergman. I'm trying to say all the names so that I can get used to saying them. Some of them are quite long and not the easiest to say. Nicknames will definitely be coming out, I think, while we manage this team. But as you can see, he's got a bit better of the attacking attributes here, crossing, passing, some decent vision on there as well. Slightly worse in the physical areas, but I'm hoping that, you know, if we've got a little bit of time left, because obviously we do get 5 substitutions in this division, so I tried to plan ahead for that. And if there is just a couple of minutes left and we maybe need a more attacking option, we've already bought on a striker and attacking midfielder, this could be quite a good option for that, especially because we do play with the wing-backs on support. Yeah, I just feel like he could be a decent offensive substitution in a role that isn't typically thought of in that sense. Or if we do just need him to fill in, if we get any injuries or suspensions or anything like that, he should be able to do a solid job. He certainly isn't dreadful on the defensive end, 11 tackling, 7 marking, some decent positioning in there too. And yeah, I'm hoping he can just be a solid backup and substitution option. So this is our star centre-half, 20-year-old Isaac Skoog, and I think I highlighted him in the last video as well, but he has some pretty solid stats across the board. The more I've looked into it, the more I'm actually impressed with this guy's stats. I mean, he just doesn't really have any major weaknesses, and his mentals are very solid, especially for a 20-year-old. And then the key the key technical attributes of tackling, marking, heading, all very good. And yeah, the key point about him is that he can just not make any errors and just sort of stabilise this backline and just be a very, very good centre-half for us. Physicals across the board as well, very good, especially things like natural fitness and stamina. But he's also got decent strength, jumping reach, and he isn't too slow, which is actually a bit of a blessing at this level. There are a lot of slow centre-halves. So I'm hoping he can really be like a proper stable centre-half who doesn't really make any errors and who we can rely on a little bit. The only thing to note about him that's a bit of a negative is he is suspended for this first game, so we're not going to see him in the first game today, but in the second game he will be back in the squad. He's been excellent in the preseason, so yeah, I've got high hopes for him. So this is one of the most interesting players I have ever used in Football Manager. His name is Felix Bergman, and the thing that will immediately jump out to you is he's valued at £10. Yeah, he's 40 years old. He looks pretty solid across the board. Like, his stats are pretty good. Obviously, he's lacking a few physicals because of his age, but his technicals and his mentals are very, very good. And especially things like 10 passing on a centre-half at this level is very impressive. And then the 10 heading, marking, 9 tackling, they're all fine. Mentals, very, very good. Good positioning, bravery, aggression. So I'm really hoping he can just be a good centre-half. He is going to be starting for us, but I think the most interesting thing about him, if we go to his history, is he's actually spent time at a club in management. 2 clubs, in fact. So, yeah, he spent 517 days in management, which is actually more than me. So, yeah, he's managed and then come back to being a player. I just think it's really weird. A bit of a surprise, really. I've never really had a player who's done that before. So, we'll sort of just see how he is. I mean, the big worry about him is he will retire mid-season because of his age. But if that's the case, we do have the depth in centre-half to cover for that. And I think while he does play, he's going to be quite good. This is a really straightforward one. This is Hugo Nelson, a backup centre-half. He's just solid across the board. He has a few attributes that worry me a little bit, things like work rate and composure. But at the same time, he's pretty decent. His defensive attributes aren't too terrible. He can pass a ball out without too much worry. A little bit slow is the main concern. I'd say that's the biggest concern about him. But as a backup, he should be fine. He's also got very good jumping reach and strength. He's quite a physical centre-half. So, yeah, he should be able to fill in his role fine. Only 23 years old as well, so can grow. And happy to be a backup. He's just a decent player all around, and I'm hoping he can prove that. So, our other backup centre-half is Edvin Skoglund, and again, similar story to the last guy, to Nilsson. He's just another backup centre-half, there if we need him. Again, very solid across the board. Possibly less weaknesses than Nilsson, but also a couple less attributes that really stand out. Obviously, not as much jumping reach, not as much strength, but a little bit more pace, so a little bit more rounded is definitely the way I would describe him. Again, he's just there to fill in at centre-half. There's not much more to say. I think he'll be a solid player. None of his attributes are actually that low. His lowest being, 5? That's quite impressive for this division, weirdly. And they're attributes that don't really matter for a centre-half, crossing, dribbling, and finishing. You don't buy a centre-half for their crossing or their finishing, do you? Another one of the strongest positions in the team then is left-back, so both full-back positions are quite strong, and this is the player who'll be starting up there, at least at the beginning of the season, William Lanholm. So, yeah, he's just a very good player, a lot more aggressive than the right-back player, but I don't know, something about him just sort of makes me unsure, and I'm not sure what it is, because his stats across the board are very, very good. None of his physicals really stand out apart from his natural fitness, but they are good enough certainly to do the job we need him to do. His mentals, again, they're fine where they need to be, and things like good work rate are always very much appreciated. And then his defensive stats, his marking, his tackling, his heading, they're all fine. He's got good passing, he's got good crossing. I'm hoping he can just sort of do everything we need him to do, and yeah, he's looking like he's going to be a really solid option. And backing him up at left-back is Hampus Bowman. Now, again, he's just a very good player all around, lacking a bit of the attacking attributes, but he's very good defensively. He's got some good physicals and some good mentals on him, so he's there to be a backup, and he should be able to provide that if we have any injuries, any suspensions, anything like that. I'm sure he can slot into the team very nicely. And backing all of those up, the type of player I love to have in my squad is Andreas Zombie. Now, he can just play every fullback position. I didn't even scout this guy before I signed him because I legitimately didn't care how good he was. I just like to have that option. If we go through a crisis, we have a defender who we can play. Like someone who's remotely competent there. He's not great, but if everything goes right, he won't play all season. He's just there for safety in the off chance that we need him. And yeah, his abilities really don't matter. He's literally here because of his positional prowess. So starting in a supporting midfield role as a central midfielder on support is Anton Olson. Now, the main thing that stands out really straight away is his physicals. 15 pace, 15 natural fitness, 11 acceleration, 13 agility, some good balance in there as well. 1 strength, that stands out quite a lot. Yeah, he gets pushed over quite easily. But then when you look over at his technicals and his mentals as well, good vision, good passing, good tackling, good first touch. He's just very, very strong all around. And I'm really hoping he can be a key creator for the side. Just with his abilities alone, like, he doesn't really have anything that stands out to me as a worry, apart from maybe that strength. But I am thinking he should be able to just keep things ticking over and create some chances for us in the midfield. And that's all I really need him to do. Next to him then in the midfield is Anton Olson, a defensive midfielder, and again, he's just there to sort of win the ball back and then turn it over. He's playing as a ball-winning midfielder on defend, a role which I think is crucial in Football Manager if you want to play a possession-based system. They're the type of player who just wins the ball back and then passes it on, keeps things ticking over, and takes a lot of the pressure off of the rest of your team, really. He has some very good physical stats and some solid mentals throughout there. He's quite weak technically, but I'm hoping that doesn't really matter too much. He doesn't really need to do too much on a technical level. He has 9 tackling and 8 passing, so they're the only real things I'm looking for from him. Decent heading as well for the long balls from goal kicks. He can just sort of flick them on or something. But essentially, he should be able to do his job to a relatively decent level. He has the attributes he needs to be able to do it. He just doesn't really have a lot beyond that, which is the only real concern about him. But in terms of doing his job, he should be absolutely fine. And the attacking midfielder we have, well, the central midfielder who's on the attacking duty is Anton Eriksson. Now, you may notice we've had a Anton Olson, an Anton Olson, and then an Anton Eriksson. It's not intentional. It's actually quite confusing. I'm hoping it doesn't cause any problems. But as you can see, he has some pretty good stats as far as an attacking midfielder goes. A couple that are also quite lacking, but he does have some good physicals across the board. Things like fitness, jumping reach, acceleration and pace are all pretty solid. Some decent strength in there as well. And then his mentals are quite good as well. 11 work rate, 8 teamwork. You know, none of these are really weak where you'd expect them to be quite strong. So yeah, I am hoping he can just sort of be that midfielder who sort of bombs forward a little bit and tries to contribute in the attack from an advanced position, sort of outside the opponent's box. Sort of that sort of area. And again, his technicals are just exactly what we need, really. Good passing, good first touch. Lacking in his dribbling and his finishing, which is maybe a bit of a concern. But he has some good defensive stats, weirdly. He has a good marking, good tackling. So who knows what he's actually going to end up as. But for now, he's been very successful as a central midfielder on attack. And I'm looking to try and keep him there. It's a position I really enjoy having. That runner who comes from deep and just contributes to the attack. I think it catches a lot of teams off guard and it works really well. So I'm glad we've got one. He's also very tall. He's about 6'4". So that's obviously a bonus, which you're never sad to have. So one of the backup midfielders is Zachariah Strand. He started in our youth team, and I am hoping that he can just sort of come on off the bench and just provide a little bit of extra legs, really. He's got some good physicals across the board, and that's mostly what I was looking for. But also, his technicals aren't terrible, and he has some decent mentals too. For a player who's only 22 years old and not being paid, most importantly, it's just useful to have him around. I'm not expecting great things from him, but he's not terrible either. So, Nima Kalevala is someone who really doesn't fit into our team. He's predominantly a left midfield. It says he can play as a ball-winning midfielder on defend, but he really can't. He has 4 tackling, 6 passing, no marking. I don't really know what I'm going to do with him, but for now he's around in case we want to switch to a wider system or we're absolutely desperate for midfielders. He can also sort of slot in up front maybe a little bit, or maybe in this attacking midfield role, which is honestly probably where we will utilise him the most. But he just sort of slots in okay, and he's there if we need him. He's not on too much money. He does want to be a first-team player, which is a bit of a concern, but as long as he doesn't kick up a fuss, he can certainly stay around. Ahmad AlJaafari is another backup central midfielder, then he's going to be backing up in the supporting role where Anton Olson plays. And again, his stats are pretty solid all around. He's just a very good player. He would be starting if I didn't find, I think it was Anton Olson off on the market for free, because he honestly looks like he's pretty decent. Certainly won't be upset if he has to play or if he has to come on off the bench. Just a very good player, really, and pretty similar, actually, to Anton Olson. So, yeah, backup option who's certainly capable of trying to force his way into the first team if anyone really underperforms. Can also play here a little bit, but not really, but he has the attributes for it, so he may play in the attacking midfielder role if we are desperate. But he's primarily going to be a central midfielder on support. I think he can do that duty pretty well. So next up is Anton The Camp. He started at the club and he's primarily a right midfielder or right back, particularly in the midfield role, which isn't a position we play, but we've kept him around purely because firstly, he's not on any money, and secondly, he can literally fill in like in most of the positions on the pitch, everything apart from defensive midfield, centre-back and striker. He can play there, so he's just a good depth option to have really, and if we do want to go with a bit wider players, it's useful to have them around. He doesn't really stand out in terms of any attributes, but he's got a few solid ones across the board. Things like pace, acceleration, passing is pretty decent, so is his first touch. He just doesn't really fit into the side. He's not actually a terrible player. So we probably will see him make a couple of appearances throughout the season if we decide to, go with some wider players at some point during a game, but he certainly won't be a main feature as far as I can see so far. Haris Avdiu then is one of our starting attacking midfielders. He's actually playing as an attacking midfielder on attack, and he has some brilliant stats. In my eyes, he's one of the best players we've used so far in this save. And yeah, he just looks very, very good across the board. As you can see, a lot of those dark blue attributes, which really do stand out. Very good physicals, none lower than 8, which is stamina and acceleration. He's just very solid across the board there. Mentals as well, though, are very, very good. 14 flair, 11 work rate, 11 aggression. 8 vision is not quite where we want it to be, but it's also not terrible. And some very good technicals, the likes of passing, long shots, first touch. His dribbling isn't bad either, some good technique. He should be one of the main players on the team, and I'm really hoping he can contribute so much in a sort of a creative effort. Maybe bag himself a couple of goals too, but it's basically just creating those chances, which I'm really looking for from him. He hasn't really picked up too many goals or assists in the preseason, but he has been sort of one of the key creator of a lot of those chances. So I'm really hoping we can see a lot more from him in that regard. It's not really numbers I'm looking at for him. He's just there to keep play ticking in an attacking and positive manner, really. He can also play as a striker if we're in an emergency, but I think you'll shortly see that that won't be necessary throughout this entire season. So partnering him in the attacking midfielder role is Hampus Lemborn, who I mentioned briefly in the schedule when we were looking at the preseason games. Very, very, very good goal scorer. He's been absolutely everywhere for us so far in the preseason. And yeah, he's just got very good stats across the board. Nothing that really makes him stand out apart from maybe that flair and aggression, but he doesn't really have any major weaknesses either. And I feel like I've said this about a lot of our players. He's just very good. He's just very aggressive. He gets stuck into the box. He likes to contribute quite a lot. And I think that 8 work rate's not really shown in the games he's played so far. He's just been, he's been pretty much everywhere. And it's really been good to have him on the team, actually. He was one of the players who I was thinking about replacing and trying to get someone a bit better. But he really has proved himself so far, and I'm hoping he can prove that he needs to be a mainstay in this side. So our starting striker so far is Anton Salah. We have a lot of Antons in this team. It's a bit weird. But he has been scoring goals for fun in the preseason. 5 goals I think he got in 7 games, which is obviously very good. Good physicals, good mentals, and good technicals across the board. A couple of things which are a little bit worrying about him, but nothing too major. It's just his sort of striker attributes, I guess. Finishing off the ball, first touch to an extent. They're not just in that upper echelon of stats for this level. They're all like 8s, 9s, and 10s, which are sort of good, as opposed to 11, 12s, 13s, which are great. He's been good, though, on the pitch so far. He's played very well, and he just spends a lot of time in the box and sort of terrorising defences. I think he's drawn 2 penalties, maybe even 3. So, yeah, he's been absolutely great so far in the preseason. But if he does start underperforming, we've got backups. So this might look like quite a weird backup striker, David Gustafson, because his stats really don't stand out at all. And you might be thinking, did you just sign him because you didn't scout him? I didn't scout him, but what I did do was look at his history. And as you can see, he's played in this division for a lot of years, and he has always been scoring goals. 12 goals, 16, 11, 10. Now, bear in mind, this is a 26-game season, but 16 goals in 21 at this level, for example, is his peak, and that is excellent. That's an excellent turnover. But also like 12 in 21, 11 in 23, those are very, very good ratios. And although I don't think he's got what it takes to be a starting striker, he's certainly got what it takes to be a good backup. So this is Pontus Olsen, another Olsen, weirdly. I didn't actually notice this before I said that, but he's basically just an out-and-out poacher. He's not great, as you can probably tell by the star ratings, but he has exactly the stats he needs to be a competent poacher. Finishing, heading, off the ball, pace, acceleration, first touch, dribbling. Like, it's the stats you can basically get away with at a bare minimum to be a poacher. Decent flair and agility too, which will obviously help out. And yeah, he's there to basically just be a last-minute striker, 5 or 10 minutes left, bring him on, run at defences, and basically just try something a little bit different if we need to go a bit more direct, or just a little bit more, just something to sort of run defenders ragged when they're already tired. That's the general idea behind bringing Pontus Olsen into the side. Now, arguably a more effective poacher is Marvin Nano, who we've also brought in. So he's a little bit more rounded in sort of other areas that Martin Olsen isn't, but he also lacks a little bit, so he's got a little bit less off the ball, for example, a little bit less flair. So, yeah, he's basically just a little bit more balanced, but at the cost of not being as good as an out-and-out poacher, I feel. So, which one of those two will play more is a mystery to anybody, but neither of them are really looking to start right now, and unless we have some major problems with Salah, I really don't see them doing so.